What happens when an undercover boss steps into a hospital, not to inspect, but to understand the lives of those who keep it running? What happens when he hears confessions so shocking? It changes everything he thought he knew. This is a story of a man who walked into a hospital as a stranger and left as someone completely transformed. The man's name was Victor Langston. He was the CEO of a large healthcare company that owned several hospitals across the country. Victor was known for his sharp mind, his relentless drive, and his ability to turn struggling hospitals into thriving institutions. But there was one hospital that had been on his radar for months: Cedar Ridge General. The numbers were slipping, employee morale was low, and patient complaints were rising. Victor had read the reports, but he wanted to see it for himself. Not as a CEO, but as one of them. Victor decided to go undercover. He grew out his beard, wore simple clothes, and introduced himself as Vic, a new janitor hired to help clean the hospital. He wanted to see the real Cedar Ridge, the good, the bad, and the ugly. He wanted to understand why this hospital, once a beacon of hope, was now struggling to keep its doors open. On his first day, Victor walked into the hospital with a mop and a bucket. The smell of antiseptic filled the air, and the sound of beeping machines echoed down the hallways. He was nervous, not because he was afraid of being recognized, but because he didn't know what he would find. He had always been a man of numbers and strategies, but this was different. This was about people. His first task was to clean the emergency room. As he mopped the floors, he watched the doctors and nurses rush from one patient to another. They moved with precision, but there was something in their eyes, a kind of exhaustion that went beyond physical tiredness. Victor noticed a young nurse. Her name tag read Lena. She was helping an elderly man who had fallen and broken his arm. Her voice was gentle, her hand steady, but there was a sadness in her smile that Victor couldn't ignore. Later that day, Victor met another janitor, a man named Otis. Otis was in his late 50s, with a kind face and a warm laugh. He showed Victor the ropes, teaching him how to clean without getting in the way of the medical staff. As they worked, Otis shared stories about the hospital. He talked about the long hours, the low pay, and the constant pressure to do more with less. But he also talked about the patients, the ones they saved, the ones they lost, and the ones they would never forget. "You see, Vic," Otis said, pausing to lean on his mop, "this place, it's not just a hospital. It's a family. We fight for each other. We cry for each other. And sometimes we just sit together in silence because there are no words." Victor nodded, but inside, he felt a pang of guilt. He had always thought of hospitals as businesses, but Otis saw them as something more, something sacred. Days turned into weeks, and Victor became a familiar face at Cedar Ridge. He cleaned floors, emptied trash cans, and listened to the stories of those around him. He learned about the struggles of the staff, the nurses who worked double shifts to make ends meet, the doctors who carried the weight of life-and-death decisions, and the patients who came in scared and left with hope. But it was one conversation, one moment, that changed everything. It was late one evening, and Victor was cleaning the hallway outside the ICU. He heard voices coming from a nearby break room. One voice was calm, almost soothing, but the other was filled with pain. Victor couldn't help but listen. "I don't know how much longer I can do this," the voice said. It was a man's voice, deep and trembling. Victor peeked through the door and saw Dr. Aaron Hayes, one of the hospital's top surgeons. He was sitting at a table, his head in his hands. Across from him was Lena, the nurse he had seen on his first day. "Aaron, you can't keep blaming yourself," Lena said softly. "What happened wasn't your fault." "But it was," Aaron replied, his voice breaking. "I was tired. I wasn't thinking clearly. If I had just taken a moment, if I had just double-checked the dosage." Victor's heart sank. He knew what Aaron was talking about. A few weeks earlier, there had been a tragic incident at the hospital. A young boy had been given the wrong dosage of medication during surgery. He didn't make it. The hospital had conducted an investigation, but no one had been held responsible. Until now. "I killed that boy, Lena," Aaron said, his voice barely above a whisper. "And I've been carrying that guilt ever since." Victor felt a lump in his throat. He wanted to step in, to say something, but he couldn't. He was just a janitor. Instead, he stayed hidden, listening as Lena tried to comfort Aaron. "You're human, Aaron," she said. "We all make mistakes. But you can't let this destroy you. You have to forgive yourself." Aaron shook his head. "I don't know if I can." Victor left the hallway that night with a heavy heart. He couldn't stop thinking about Aaron's confession. He had always believed that mistakes in healthcare were a result of systemic issues, understaffing, lack of resources, poor management. But this was different. This was a personal failure, a moment of weakness that had cost a life. The next day, Victor decided to talk to Aaron. He found him in the hospital chapel, sitting alone in the dim light. Victor hesitated for a moment, then sat down beside him. "Dr. Hayes," Victor began, his voice gentle, "I couldn't help but overhear your conversation last night." Aaron looked up, his eyes red and swollen. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice wary. "My name is Vic," Victor replied. "I'm one of the janitors. But more importantly, I'm someone who cares about this hospital and about the people in it." Aaron sighed. "I don't know what to say. I've been carrying this guilt for so long. I don't know how to let it go." Victor nodded. "Guilt is a heavy burden, but it's not one you have to carry alone. You made a mistake, but that doesn't define you. What defines you is what you do next." Aaron looked at Victor, his eyes searching for something. "Hope, maybe." "What should I do?" he asked. "Start by forgiving yourself," Victor said. "And then use this experience to make sure it never happens again. Be the doctor you were meant to be. Be the person who saves lives, not just for your patients, but for yourself." Aaron was silent for a long time. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Thank you, Vic. I don't know if I can ever make up for what happened, but I'll try." Victor smiled. That's all anyone can ask for. As the days went on, Victor watched Aaron transform. He became more focused, more compassionate, and more determined to make a difference. He started a new training program for the hospital staff, teaching them how to avoid medication errors. He also reached out to the family of the boy who had passed away, offering them his deepest apologies and a promise to honor their son's memory. Victor knew it was time to reveal his true identity. He called a meeting with the hospital staff, standing before them not as a janitor, but as their CEO. The room fell silent as he spoke. "I came here to understand what was happening at Cedar Ridge," Victor said. "And what I found was a team of incredible people who cared deeply about their work and their patients. But I also found a system that was failing you. And for that, I am truly sorry." He went on to announce new changes for the hospital, better pay, more staff, and improved resources. But more than that, he promised to truly listen to the voices of those who worked there. As the meeting ended, Victor saw Aaron in the crowd. Their eyes met, and for the first time, Victor saw something in Aaron's face: peace. The story of Cedar Ridge General is a reminder that behind every hospital, every business, every institution, there are people with fears, with dreams, with mistakes, and with the power to change. It's a story about forgiveness, about second chances, and about the strength it takes to keep going, even when the weight of the world feels too heavy to bear. And the moral of the story? It's simple. We are all human. We all make mistakes. But it's not the mistakes that define us. It's what we do after. It's the courage to face our fears, to admit our faults, and to keep moving forward. Because in the end, that's what truly matters. Before we wrap up, I want to take a moment to thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. Stories like these remind us of the power of kindness, courage, and standing up for what's right. If this story touched your heart, made you think, or inspired you in any way, let us know in the comments below. Tell us where you're watching from. And don't forget to share this story with others. Sometimes, a simple act of sharing can make a huge impact. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and join our community. We've got more heartfelt stories coming your way. Until next time, remember, kindness changes lives. See you soon.